So what has surprised you most about getting older?
The thing I would say is that God still has a purpose for me, and He still wants to use me. You know, and my son doesn't get that.
You know, the generation we grew up in, we were in church every time the door was open. But was I walking with Jesus then?
When did you all see church seem to be more consumer-driven than it used to be?
Post the 68 revolutionary Nixon period in the early 70s, it was the entertain me period.
Because the church had been growing exponentially in the 50s, you know, then you had to maintain that. And so then you begin to compare what's church B doing over here and what's church C doing over there, and what can you do to incorporate some of those same things,
and it came,
or do better.
It was a wrong view of the wrong kind of growth. We were looking at nickels and noses as proof that your church was growing, rather than what's the spiritual temperature of your congregation.
Which, by the way, I do hope, because we were all talking about every generation wanted the next generation to have it easier or better than we did. So maybe we have reached a pinnacle of how you measure better than, which was the acquisition of things and environments and houses and cars, etc. And that maybe there's a redefinition of what the next generation's better will be. Maybe that's what we can hope for and pray for, is that, yes, that redefinition occurs that starts the whole thing over again.
Well, welcome, boomers. Welcome to the table.
Thank you.
I am so grateful that you have made some time to talk with me a little bit today, just about your life, your journey, the journey you've been making with your family, your friends, and your Lord. And we're going to talk about all that stuff today, and get your insights about the church and its future. And we're going to have some fun with that. But first, let's make sure to introduce who is here. So Linda, let's start with you. And I'd like for you to tell me your name and the year you were born.
I'm Linda Clagg, and I was born in 1947.
Bill Hare, I was born in 1952.
Okay.
Jackie Bryant, and I was born in 1961.
Hi, I'm Bob Scott. I was born in 1950.
I'm Judy Hansard, and I was born in 1954.
Okay. All right. Well, here's what I want to do to start. Okay. I'm going to read a paragraph, 2-3 paragraphs, that describe what they say, you know, who they is, you know, what they say about boomers. And I want you to just listen to it, and then I want you to react and see if this is a fair summary of your generation, just as a kind of high altitude, 30,000 foot. All right? All right. The baby boomer generation, between 1946 and 1964. They were the children of victory, born in the explosive aftermath of World War II, when soldiers came home, families reunited, and the world dared to dream again. In just 2 decades, more than 76 million babies were born in the U.S. alone, so many that the demographers had no choice but to call them a boom. But this generation was more than a number. They were a movement. Boomers were raised in an era of black and white TVs, Billy Graham crusades, and when the church pews were full and Sunday best was a given.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. They witnessed the golden age of American industry, the birth of rock and roll, the Cold War's chill, and the revolution of the 60s. They marched for civil rights, landed on the moon, and ushered in the information age. In the church, they led innovation, launching youth ministries, founding mega churches, and embracing new technologies to spread timeless truth. Now, in their encore years. I love that. I love that phrase. In their encore years. Yeah. Now in their encore years, boomers are facing some of life's most profound questions. What is my legacy? How do I stay faithful in a world that has changed so much? How do I pass down wisdom and not just wealth? Some are thriving with renewed purpose. Others are quietly wrestling with disillusionment or grief. But all carry stories, scars, and sacred insight born from a life lived on the front lines of history. Boomers are not done. Their voices matter, and the church still needs their courage, their perspective, and their prayers. A fair assessment?
That's actually very good.
Is that pretty good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
A lot stronger, yeah.
okay, good, good. So that kind of hits the high spots, hits some high spots, the demographics, the sociological line of sight to what your generation has experienced. So I want to take us a little deeper and get some personal experiences along the way. So let's start out with some fun, though. So if boomers had one theme song, what would the theme song of your generation be?
I think for me, the Beatles were the biggest influence musically, and so I think maybe Imagine.
Imagine, and Judy said
It's been a hard
it's been a
day's
hard
night.
day's night.
Hard Day's
Okay.
Night is really a good answer.
Hey Jude,
Yeah.
all those.
Okay, very good.
I think Imagine encapsulates a lot, though, Bill,
Yeah.
because we felt that we could dream to be whatever we wanted to be.
That's right. Okay.
Now, when you first said it, what song, the one that came to mind was Unchained Melody. I still believe it is the world's greatest love song.
Okay, there we go. Well, we could probably put together a whole playlist, couldn't we? And hit all the high spots. Okay, these are good. Now here's a little bit more personal. What is something your kids or grandkids do that completely baffles you?
Get tattoos.
Okay.
I mean, when I was a kid, there were two categories of people that had tattoos. Hells Angels Motorcycle Club members and drunken sailors
Okay.
or Marine,
Right, right.
So, and now, if your whole body's not covered, you're not even with it. So
Okay.
that's been hard to get used
Okay.
to.
All right. Did anybody get a tattoo? Anybody here get a tattoo? Okay. All right.
Nope.
I could ask, but I won't. If you were to get a tattoo, what would it be? But I won't ask that.
My mother's signature.
Oh, your mother's signature.
Yeah.
Do you still have it somewhere?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's creative.
I don't know. I just think
Just don't show.
I
Bill.
won't show Bill.
Don't show me.
Don't let Bill see. Okay. All right. Next question. If you could relive one decade of your life, which would it be and why? One decade of your life.
I'm going to say my high school years, and most people say that was the worst for them.
Really?
But I loved my high school years.
Okay.
That was 72. I graduated in 1972. But I was not a wild child. I just had good friends, and we had fun and football games, and I studied just what I had to study to get by,
Yeah.
and it was a good time.
Okay. What else?
Now, see, I would take very similar to that. I would kind of split it 65 to 72 or so because I was too immature. I was having way too much fun.
Okay.
And I had to, suddenly discover I need to get serious about life if I was going to do anything. I wish I had had those few years back again to redo it and not be as childish as I was.
Okay.
But I had a great time.
Okay. Yeah, right. That's good.
Yeah. I would say my high school years, which for me was from about 1972 until about 1979. Because we what you call high school or middle school age and high school age
all one, yeah,
merged together in that one period. And I just had a lot of good friends. I grew up because I started when I was about 10 and finished when I was about, 17 or thereabout.
right.
So it was a period of growth. For me, it was, prior to that, I had lived away from home to get a better education in our part of the island. So it was coming back home, being where my parents were. And it was right after that that I left to come to the United States. So that was when I was really home
Those are
and could
formative years,
understand,
yeah.
and grow up.
Yes,
And
okay.
so that was a special time for me.
Okay, all right.
High school was great, but as I've had time to think, I was married in 72. I was 20 years old, hadn't finished college. Beth had. We did not start having kids until our first daughter was born in 79, so we waited 6 or so years. And so we had first daughter 79, 80, and then 82. I tell people I'm a slow learner, but I don't forget. And but I really enjoyed the baby years, and also for the grandbabies. So I've not met a lot of men that like their grandkids to be older. I would like for them to be back in diapers again. I handled that a lot better.
Okay, that's good. All right. Linda?
I think there's an echo here because I don't usually think about going back and reliving something.
Right.
I think each age just sort of prepares you for whatever you have to face next.
Right.
But I would say the same, that the 60s pretty much.
Okay.
Into the first part of the 70s while I was in the latter part of junior high and then all of high school and college. And although it was fraught with a lot of decisions that had to be made and a lot of pressure for grades and all of that, that was exciting. And I had good friends and lots of good things happened to me during those years.
Right.
And so I tend to fall back on what I learned a lot in those years. And I grew up in West Virginia, and I got married in '68, but there were very few Vietnam War, protests. It came late to West Virginia, mostly after I was leaving school. So even though I was in college during a lot of time when there was upheaval, our campus only had a little of that, so it was still rather a calm time.
Okay.
And that's when I met Tim, and that's when we got married, and so there were, I would say the 60s bracket. The
You
60s.
all are saying you're all spanning some time in which cataclysmic events, tumultuous changes in our country, our nation, our world. Kennedy, King assassination, Watergate, Vietnam, all those events, and yet, even in the last 15, 20 years, 9/11, 2 wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, and you turn on the news, and every day there's something more. My question for you guys: you all lived through the first era in which all these big events were shared in real time.
Yes.
What was more shaping for you, formative for you, that era because of your age, your young age, or this current era where there's something every day, and now you have expanded your vulnerabilities because you have children and grandchildren and you worry about them and not just yourself? Which was easier to manage?
I think back then, we had 3 networks.
Yes.
No social media, no internet, no computer,
Newspapers.
Yeah, and so to me, I would love to go back to that. I think we're inundated, and it's just, it's overwhelming, and not in a good way.
I think too, I look at that and I think about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and I was in the 4th grade, and I remember it like it was yesterday. But now we see so much that it's almost like, well, that's life.
Yes.
That's life, and that's what, that's what our poor children
Desensitized
and
to.
grandchildren are
Do you know who
exposed
else
to.
says that? You know who else says that? On this, earlier this week, on Tuesday, Gen Z, I'm sitting here with Gen Z, and they are talking to me about the saturation of information. Their words. They're talking about, this is the first generation that has never not been saturated from birth with nonstop stimuli at every turn. And they're also known as the most anxious generation in modern history. Their observation is they longed for a time before they were born when they did not have the same real-time access, because everybody talks about we need to raise awareness on this issue. The conversation that day was about, no, we need to lower awareness. In other words, knowing about so much happening is actually, I'm helpless to it, I can't change it, and now I'm just going to be anxious about it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and by the way, I very much agree. I would love to go back to that time, but at the same time, I look at it and say, because there was only 3 networks, and there was a newspaper that had one political view.
Right.
The ability to manage what you saw, what you heard, what you believed, and how you thought was so easy. I mean, today at least there is this bombardment, too much, of differing ideas. At least you can get, you can raise your awareness to where you have to think for, what do I really believe?
Yeah.
Where in the past they did manage it, but it would be so much wonderful if somebody was managing it for me.
Exactly. That's right. Okay.
But weren't we listening to Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow and people that we kind of look back at as being
Trustworthy.
trustworthy, but
Uncle
they
Walter.
kind of hold,
Uncle Walter.
hold the
Standard.
the banner. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk now about seeing life through the lens of the boomer eyes here, boomer eyes. I want you to tell me about, and we've already begun to actually talk about some of these things. Tell me about an experience that changed you from that moment forward. An experience in your life that after which things were different for you.
I'll do it first. I went to University of Tennessee, go Vols.
Go Vols, that's it.
And 1968, 25,000 students, 37 of which were black. I'm going up, mom's sending me off to college,
Right.
and I'm getting a roommate. That just shows it. I go in, I'm checking in with my roommate, who I knew where he was from and where he was. He had already gotten there because he was in the band.
Okay.
And so he's got it all set up. And I moved in, and mother and dad, and mom was not in any way a bigot. I never would have ever said that about her. But she starts poking around, snooping around on his side of
His
the room.
stuff, okay.
And she looks over her and says, "Oh my gosh, she has a black girlfriend." And I went, "Mom, he's probably
might be black."
And then her comment was, and I'll never forget it until the day I die, "Oh my gosh, what would my bridge club say?" But the point was, initially their take was, you need to change, and I'm going, okay, because I want to get them out. George and I go down to talk to the people, and in the middle of I'm saying I need to change. I look and said, "George, I went to college to learn something. I probably am going to learn more from you than I'll ever learn anything else I do. Would you stay with me till you decide you don't want to be with me?"
Okay.
And we had a great relationship.
Wow.
That was a big deal.
Turning point.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that changes the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Bob. Thank you. All right, others. A moment that changed you.
In the sixth grade, I had a classmate I was on the basketball team with was shot and killed by a cousin. They were playing with a gun they thought was not loaded. And I remember going to the wake in his home, and his body was in the living room. And then I lost, as a senior, 2 friends, one in a car accident and one to cancer. And so death at such a young age really brings you up short and makes you realize life really is a vapor. It's a mist, and it's here one second and gone the next. What are you going to do with it, kind of thing. And I'd like to say I did something significant at that time, but those stayed with me, and I think it injected a seriousness about life and
All right.
eternity.
Thank you, Bill.
For me, it would be hard to say, but I think when Kennedy was killed, I was a junior in high school. You know, I can tell you which period I was in when it was revealed to us. That was shocking. Kennedy campaigned in West Virginia. That was a state he was using as a springboard. And so that's when I first was introduced to the whole idea of politics. I really hadn't paid much attention. But I was in the 8th grade, you just start hearing about that in history and civics, and so you start paying attention to what's going on. And so then he just exhibited so much hope for everyone because he was younger. And my grandmother thought that he looked like my father. And, it was just interesting. And so you were following here, and here's this person with all this hope and young vigor who had been through a lot in his life already, and then he's gone. And I think that left an impact on me for a long time. Then when that happened again in '68, and we lost Bobby and Martin Luther King, it just was, when you thought that those people were doing something that was right,
Right. Okay.
it can be intimidating.
I think for me, it was leaving home, leaving Jamaica, and coming to this country. And I think what was most impactful about that transition for me was the fact that I was coming to college, and my parents were very particular about the fact that I was not going to live on campus, a very sheltered pastor's kid. I'm going to live with people they know. So what my mom did was she spoke with someone who had lived over here before and asked them if they knew anybody in Washington, D.C. that I could live with when I went hard. And this particular lady said, the only person I could think of is Bert and Carrie. And we never knew Bert and Carrie. And those people never knew me, but just knew that I was part of the family of God and that my parents were who they were, and welcomed me with open arms. Total stranger, didn't know me, didn't know my parents, and took me into their home, treated me like a daughter, gave me lunch money, gave me bus fare, gave me everything I needed, and took care of me the whole time I went to college. And then my sister came afterwards, and she lived with them too, and they took care of both of us. And they became like parents to us. They helped pay for my wedding. He taught me to drive. Just really showed me what the love of God looks like in action. And I think that was transformative for me.
Thank you.
And they became grandparents for my kids. And, left them a little bit of something. I couldn't ask for more.
Are they still
No, they're
around?
both deceased now.
passed? Okay.
Did they have children of their own?
They had one daughter that they adopted. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we became their other daughters, my sister and I. It's just changed my whole life about how God takes care of us, how He provides people, how He welcomes us, and what the church in action looks like.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
I just, one of my biggest memories and change agents in my job was I went to school to be a special education teacher. As a child, I had a friend who had a brother who was Down syndrome, and we were better playmates almost than me and my friend were, because every time I went to their house, that's who I wanted to be with. But I decided early on that's what I wanted to do. And my first job was at an institution that was in Dunwoody at the time. And we went on a visit to Central State Hospital in Milledgeville. And I walked in the door, and the way that they had those children and young adults housed just almost floored me. I almost wanted to turn around and run, because it was like you see in the movies. There were cages, there were children with no clothes on, and I was like, this is not right. And I left there with it hit me, and it still hits me, but I left there with a feeling that this will never be a part of what I do and what I'm a part of. And, luckily I was in the public school system and was able to work through that after, but the institution I worked with in Dunwoody was like a home. Right. So those children were, very well treated, but I didn't realize that existed. So when I saw that, I was like, never again.
Okay.
And that was just a real turning point in my beginning career.
Okay.
To make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you all. Next question is similar, but it's takes a different turn. If you could go back and have a conversation with yourself at a younger age, what age would that be that you would visit yourself, and what would you tell yourself?
For me, it would be about age 8.
Okay.
Wow.
For me, it would be about age 8.
What would you say if you had one thing to say to her?
Don't worry. God's going to work it out. And it's going to be all right.
Okay. Others?
I would probably say it's about 16. High school was real easy for me. That didn't have to do anything, work very hard to to achieve. I would go back and say, just increase it 10 to 20%.
Okay.
All you got to do is just give it a little more effort, because it's going to pay off so much more in the future.
Okay. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. You don't have to do a lot. Just a little bit more, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Mine would be when I had babies.
What would
Young,
you say?
I would tell myself everything doesn't have to be perfect.
Okay.
And I still work on that.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. Okay.
That's a real good.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yep.
That's a high five for moms.
That's it. That's right.
You got more experience than I do.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? What would you say if you could go back?
I would agree with Judy. I would go back to when I was a younger mother and say, don't sweat it. Just love them and keep moving forward.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Anybody else? All right. So, and by the way, all these questions, not everybody, we don't have to answer each one. Just if one resonates with you, you answer. So what has surprised you most about getting older? now that you are in your encore years, what has surprised you most? Simple answer.
It's not as scary as it looked when you were on the other side.
Okay.
Remember, she is the youngest.
I still got a way to go.
Jackie, it's coming. It's coming. The train is moving. It's
I
coming.
think that the thing I would say is that God still has a purpose for me, and He still wants to use me. You know, and my son doesn't get that. You know, he'll say, "Why are you all so busy?" You know, you're retired.
Sure. Okay.
Doesn't get that.
Yeah.
But I was going to say with Linda, you know, it really is cool that God actually believes that you have an encore. That He's got an encore waiting for you if you'll just take it. And I've been able to live that recently over the last few years, and I feel much more blessed because of it.
Part of it, I think, is that we're so busy with raising families and then trying to maintain a job and doing it to the best of our ability, and probably a lot more than we really can do, we do. And so when we back off, it's a different kind of work that we're doing now. It's, you know, that's why it feels so different. And it is a blessing.
It is a true blessing.
That's a good insight.
And everybody says this, I can't believe that I feel, how would I ever work? Because I'm as busy now as I was then in a different way. But I feel blessed to be able to do what I do. But you know, if you get on the other side of it, I have noticed more aches and pains.
Aches and pains. Okay.
Amen.
Pains that come along with it.
Amen.
We're not talking about those.
Okay. All right. Next question, and these next two questions. Feel free to give an explanation, but also because of the sensitivity of it, feel free to give a statement. Because I'm going to ask you, what is your deepest fear and your greatest anxiety these days? What's a deep fear or a deep anxiety that you carry?
How much time do we have?
As much as you need.
You know, I just, you know, I was raised in a Republican household in the Deep South at a time where I remember when we would have mock elections in grade school, I was probably the only Republican vote in the whole classroom. Remember AUH20 bumper stickers on my dad's car. That's Goldwater for those of you
Who haven't
had chemistry yet or didn't do well.
Right.
But I never remember a time thinking in my church, is my pastor a Republican or a Democrat? I didn't know. Didn't matter. Didn't talk about it. Wasn't a part of growing up. And if you did find out somebody was of a different political persuasion, didn't make any difference. Everybody got along. You could just rib and joke and not have to worry about somebody beating somebody up or killing somebody. That's the most anxious thing that I have is I know that this country and its history has gone through many deep, dark, awful periods. So I'm not trying to say this is the deepest, darkest, most awful period.
Sure.
But I don't get it. I'm 73 years old, and if somebody can explain it to me, please do. I would like to know what is going on in our country where we can't have disagreements that are civil and that we can still love one another. Yeah, so that's, I'll shut up.
Well, I wasn't going to go political, but I will say that would be my greatest fear of all the fears. And there are lots of times that I have to really pray about it not being too much for me. my concern is for our country and for our people. The divisions are too great.
I think y'all speak for a lot of people. I think you have a lot of company with that anxiety. Yeah. Okay.
And I agree with everything that has been said. I think I would like to add to that I worry about the church. And I worry about the generations that will be my grandchildren and whether they'll be able to, and generations beyond, and whether they will be able to understand and come to a knowledge of faith and a personal walk with God that's transformative. Because somehow I just feel like we're losing a significant sector of our society.
Yeah, I agree. I drive by the baseball fields on our way to church on Sunday, and I'm like, it's like this is just another thing for people to do.
It's
They
full.
they don't realize the importance of those children being where they need to be. And I think as a grandmother, my greatest fear and anxiety is like your grandchildren knowing Jesus and knowing and having a personal relationship with Him.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be just something else to do.
Yeah, I mean, I worry about the secularism throughout our society and the turmoil that we all see with where technology has taken us. And I worked in technology forever, and so I mean, I feel somewhat guilty for it, for a little piece of it. But the point is, yeah, I do worry about whether or not my grandson, when he goes out with my daughter, as she's now grown fully mature and in life, is that they will have a stable environment that they can know God, have a relationship, and understand what is really important and what is not. I mean, we're so secularized that they really just do not understand the power of having a relationship with the Lord Jesus.
Those are all such great insights, everyone. The thing that I am so excited about is for you to hear the conversation I had with Gen Z and millennials who sound like you. So there is a despairing that can overcome our hearts when we think about the big picture, but it takes a seed, and our church has some seeds in some of our younger generations that give me hope, and I'm eager for you to hear them.
We were growing up in the golden age of the church,
That's right. Yes.
and we experienced that. And we can look back and see how formative that was in a mostly positive direction.
That's right.
Not always.
That's right.
Not always. But that's what you wish for your children, to be able to grow up in a church where they know everyone and they feel accepted and they can grow in their abilities to do things for Jesus and, just grow in that ministry.
And just make good friends.
And make good friends. And as a young couple,
friends.
that's important. And I see in my son, he and his, my daughter-in-law go to a more contemporary service type church. And they're not in a group, that doesn't fit very well with small children and a work schedule that's tight. And how much I really appreciate the fact that we had a Sunday school and we could go through those life moments with that group of people. And that's important, to be able to go through those young married years with couples that are experiencing the same things but still have that faith as your grounding. I just feel that that's important because it was important to me. So I'm sure that there's another way to do it. It's just that I didn't live it.
What's powerful to me is that so our boomer conversation, our silent generation conversation, our X generation conversation is saturated with so much love for the church that there's a desire I hear in everybody's voices here about the younger ones to experience that, to know it, whether they know they will need it or not. Because life has proven the need over the years. So that may be a good segue here. So while we're talking
And
about,
life
yeah, go
has
ahead.
proven too that I don't know, we can poll the table, but for many of us, that happened at a very young age.
Yes. And some of my most vivid
Yes.
memories of my childhood involve church activities.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. There are people
Well,
who get saved.
while we're
later,
talking
but-
about generational differences, why don't we take a moment to rant for a minute? That'll be fun. Here's what I want to ask you.
Don't get
Tell me something. Don't get me started. I can't find the off switch, right? Tell me something
Where is
about
it?
a younger generation that just drives you crazy. Tell me something about a younger generation that just drives you crazy, baffles you.
I don't know if it drives me crazy, but it's really very different for me. I guess this story will illustrate it. So I was talking some years ago to my son who was then early 20s maybe. And so I was telling him that I'd met this couple that met each other through work at some company. And, they worked together and they got married and they worked with this company for 30 years, whatever. I said, wait a minute, Mom. None of your children will work with any company for 30 years. That is not a commendation.
Yeah, that's right.
Just cut that down. And so, just the sense that they have learned that this loyalty to company is not important. You're loyal to yourself. It's not a bad thing, but it's like the stability that I want to see, they're not about that. They're like, this is the time to just kind of explore if I don't like. And if we stay at one place for 5 years, that's way too long. It's not going to make you as marketable as if you go around, what on earth?
It's transactional. It's not relational, it's transactional.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in some ways they've kind of learned that companies are not necessarily loyal to people who they see stay with them for years and years. Yeah, some companies are, but I see somebody get fired after whatever. No, we're gonna explore. If I don't like it, I'll just move on.
Okay. All right. Then tell me something about a younger generation that inspires you. Something that you see in them that makes you say, how about that?
You and I talked about, I'm involved with Rotary pretty well. And because of that, we do a lot of work with the high schools around the community up in Forsyth County and also Johns Creek. And I am amazed to see some of the talent that there is in the schools. And it doesn't have to be in, Johns Creek or Northview where you really have a very unique socioeconomic situation. It's across, the entire Forsyth County up into North Forsyth where, there's still some struggles up there.
Sure.
There are some unbelievably bright,
Yes.
articulate, caring kids that get involved in lots of things. That part of it, you might say, so they can get into a good college. I don't care.
Fine.
They really, they care, they act, and they are involved. And so we kind of go back to maybe the seed about the church. Seeing their level of engagement and involvement in helping others and in community activities. I pray that will be that seed that will grow back to the church. If they're not in church today, but they are engaged in things that, Jesus would be happy to see them do, then maybe we got a future. That's, okay.
Okay, that's good.
I think the flip side of what I said before for the annoyance of, just no loyalty is their courage and their willingness to take risk.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're probably able to do that because we played it kind of safe. So we give them, we've given them enough leverage that they can now go take some more risks. But I like the fact that they're not scared. I think for many of us, we played it safe because we had to play it safe because we couldn't fail, right? But for them, they feel more emboldened to, well, I can take this risk. And when am I going to do it? But now, let me do it now.
Right.
And they have the support that they need to be able to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we don't give, this young generation enough credit. I'll use a personal example. I apologize for that, but I have two of my grandsons that just recently went on a trip with their father to Kenya. It was my son-in-law's third trip, but the ninth trip for the group of men who have gone. And they keep going back because on the first trip, the Kenyan pastor said to the man who was leading that initial trip, well, I know you come over here and you feel good about yourself, and then you'll go back and you'll forget about us. And that gentleman, because of that statement, has now gone back for a ninth time. He wanted to say, no, we're not going to forget about you. My son, and I went over, Beth and I went over to their house the day before they flew out because I wanted my 12 and 14-year-old grandsons to know that their lives were going to change because of this trip they were making. They couldn't help it. And I said, and the fact that you will be there, and there were 10 sons with 7 fathers that went on this trip, so a total of 17. I said, because you are on this trip will be unlike any trip that Andrew had been on, my son-in-law, because the interaction of your sons with the children in the community where you will change the dynamic of your trip. My 12-year-old grandson got there, and a man comes up behind him and covers his eyes and said, "Are you George Weaver?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I've been praying for you." Andrew, 3 years ago, had showed on his phone a picture of his family and told him, "This is Elise, this is Colt, this is George, this is Megan, my wife." He remembered and prayed for them. I got chills telling that story again. Can you imagine George ever forgetting that moment?
Let me ask a personal question. So, we talk a lot about, and I'm thinking theologically now, okay? So we talk a lot about how all true learning, whether it's just education in general or theological education, all true learning begins with a certain degree of unlearning. You have to unlearn patterns before you can learn new patterns. Unlearn old systems before you can learn new systems. As you have thought about your journey in the Lord, when it comes to God, your thoughts on God, theologically, your thoughts on church, thoughts on faith, what at this stage in your encore have you had to unlearn?
That not everybody's like me, and not everybody has the same background that I had. And you have to open up and learn where people come from, what their thoughts are about things, what they bring to the table. It's not like when I was a child and pretty much everybody was the same.
Yeah, I think the unlearning for me has been, the generation we grew up in, we were in church every time the door was open. And it was, my mother was the head of the WMU for a period. My father was, did a stint as chairman of the deacons. My brother and I were in the RAs and did, you just were always there. Was a part of the culture. But was I walking with Jesus then? Did I understand what I use this, most of people in my generation saw accepting Christ as, you've got this fire insurance policy, and if you sign here on the dotted line, you'll miss hell. And then thank you very much, and I'm on my merry way. However I wanted to live the rest of my life was up to me. I could go to church, not go to church, whatever. That's not the way it is. Jesus lays claim to your life.
That's it.
And I think things like practicing the way, have brought that into more clear focus. And the fact that, no, Jesus wants all of me right now. He's not waiting till I die. He wants me now. And so I think that's the part of being at this church that has meant so much to me at my age. I thank God that I found it at whatever age. I think as we've been sitting here, I remember when I was in seminary, hearing a pastor preach in chapel. He was retiring, and the president gave him the pulpit. And he stood in that pulpit and he said, if I've got one regret, it's that I didn't spend more time with my family. And I went, oh my Lord, you are a complete failure. I determined right then, when I retire, I wanted to say something like, yeah, my only regret is I didn't spend more time at work.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because your first obligation is faith, family, and then whatever.
Right.
And so I am just so grateful that we have reached a point in our spiritual walk that we're looking at the right things, that we're looking at how Francis Schaeffer did a book, How Should We Then Live?
Right.
This is how we should be living. Now, am I getting it right every day? Heck no. But I know what I should be doing.
But we know there's a difference.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I did not grow up in a Southern Baptist church. I grew up in an American Baptist church. There were similarities. I grew up in the Bible Belt for sure. But some of the activities are different. The structure was different. But I was involved in Sunday school. Had a very active role in the youth ministry at our church. I was on a leadership team, even for the county. But all that time, we know we're living for Jesus, right? But the emphasis in the 50s for sure was there are the right things to do and there are the wrong things to do. And that was just how you were raised, and that was part of the culture, and you knew it and you internalized it, and you wanted that to be how you lived your life. So I always wanted to be the good girl and the person that achieved and that always did these things. So you live your life that way. And then you get so busy raising a family, you try to inculcate that same thing, right? And when we came here, your life slowed down because we moved out of the Washington metropolitan area where it's always very busy, and came here, and we were retired, supposedly. And it gave it time for more study. And I was in a Bible study group that Ricky had Jill Jenkins start. And that's when I think that I went another level in my faith. Because we were reading Peterson. It was all I could do to read the Sunday school lesson for the next week when you have kids and a job. But reading Peterson and thinking about all that you can do this the James story, right? But it's in our hearts. Where are we in our hearts? I loved the Lord. I knew that. But was I really just turning over Him? Because maybe it's not always that I do the right thing. And what is the right thing? That becomes a question in your life. What is it right for you to do? And be more accepting, because if you're raised in a judgmental system, you learn to judge. And you're judging yourself, at least I was, the whole time. But it allowed me to be more open and understanding. And to see a much bigger picture, I think, of my faith than I had seen before, So falling upward, I guess, was maybe the hardest thing that we studied. But so I credit my upbringing at Baptist Temple, and I give a tremendous amount of credit to what I learned as a young couple and then raising our children at Columbia Baptist and Falls Church. But here I was in a different stage of life and was able to really grow my faith in a new dimension. And that has meant the world.
I want to connect a couple of dots between what I'm hearing, because it is so incredibly encouraging hearing you all talk about what you've inherited growing up, and then what you have by necessity needed to question and even deconstruct for the greater thing, the further journey, letting the temple come down so that something else rises. But here's the power of what I'm hearing you say. The gift was the structure that you were given early in order to break it down. And that if we can't help build the infrastructure that later will be broken down and rebuilt and risen into something new, we rob our younger generation from the further journey later. That there is a sequence to this spiritual journey, right? But the purpose of this interview is not for me to preach yet. This is October. I'm just hearing you, and this is a confirmation of what you have been saying.
Yeah.
One brick upon the other. And so,
Can I say something?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
In, I don't know when it was, maybe the 80s, the "What Would Jesus Do" slogan came out. I remember as a youth, well, I was beyond a youth. I was probably a young adult at that time. And it was a big thing at our at church camp that year, was that we all had the bracelet with WWJC and JD and all that on it. And so we talked it. And and everybody, oh yeah, they all bought in and whatever. You don't know how many times now, as an encore adult, I ask myself, what would Jesus do? Not because of that slogan,
Sure.
but because then it was just a slogan. But now I find myself
Really
questioning it. And sometimes before I go into something, and sometimes it's after. And I'm saying, you didn't do so good on that one. But I don't know why that sticks with me. And I hear myself saying it to the grandchildren. What would Jesus do? I'm sure that's just going, but I question myself a lot, and want to make sure that I'm at least trying to figure that out, because as a 70-year-old, I'm still figuring things out.
Sure. Okay.
Well, if you build that foundation, as you said, and by the way, I did Sunbeams, I did RAs, I did training union, I did choir, I did
I was from the
Wednesday
tribe of
night.
Benjamin.
Yeah, and
On the seventh day
I
circumcised.
did every one of those things,
Yes.
But, and when and at the time I was baptized, I truly, was baptized in faith and believed and knew that, I was saved and that Christ was, my Lord, etc. But, and I've shared this as part of my testimony. where you would love to see a linear graph, grafted out, and you see your growth with Christ being always going up. I use the analogy, mine looks like a stock market.
Sure.
There's highs and there are lows, and then there are highs, and it was all through life as we went through it. That Pat and I've gone through that. There was that where the relationship with my Lord was strong. Then other times it was never went away, and I never lost my faith, but it wasn't where it needed to be.
Well, the mountaintop experiences aren't appreciated if you haven't had some valleys.
Oh, yeah, and, exactly. But the point is, if you can establish that baseline early on, it will carry you throughout your life. And when you do the best of the world of things, that God would be proud of you at, and then you do the things that God would sit there and go, boy, what's wrong with you? But you're going to be there. You're going to get through it. And that's the thing about it. I really hope that we can build that baseline, stable environment where they walk away with all of the things inculcated into their life that will carry them through.
That's a good word. I'm gonna read a couple of statements from people who study us. Okay? Barna, Gallup, Pew, the folks who do this work. And I'll read a few, and then I want to get you to react to a couple of them. First, no generation has given more financially to the church than boomers. Their generosity built buildings, funded missions, and made ministries possible for decades. That's Christian Stewardship Network. This was the generation that brought church into the public square with radio and television and stadium crusades and later the internet, all in the name of reaching more people. Billy Graham Center and Archives. Boomers taught us that faith doesn't have to be dull. They embraced innovation in worship, creative expression, and modern leadership strategies to make the church more engaging. It's Worship Leader Magazine. But then here's what I want you to react to. Boomers helped usher in an era where church felt more accessible, more excellent, more relevant. But in doing so, it also began to feel like a product to consume. That's by Barna. What do you think about that?
Well, we are the biggest consumers.
Well, that's right.
I mean, we were at the beginning. Certainly, our parents had to live through the Depression, and things were tight, and things were tight for us when we were growing up, at least for my family and Tim's family, very tight. But once you start making, money and you are paying for things, we changed the society. You had television commercials and all of that, that wasn't there for the other generation. They had commercials on the radio, but
when did you all see some of the consumer marketing and the market expansion become part of the church world? When did you start to see church seem to be more consumer driven than it used to be?
I would say it was post the 68 revolutionary Nixon period in the early 70s. It was the entertain me period. Show me entertainment.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking the late 70s, early 80s. I think so many of us at that time saw we were the group coming to sit out in the congregation and be entertained. What are you going to do to entertain us? And as you rightly pointed out, God is the audience, not us. We're the actors. We're supposed to be doing something. And so I think a lot of us, especially when you went through the mega church, we're going to hire people to do all this stuff for us. I don't need to witness. I'm paying you to witness. I don't need to teach. I'm paying you to teach. We're the consumer and you're supposed to come through for us. No.
I think part of that was part of the drive that the church had to grow. All the individual churches were supposed to be growing, and if you weren't growing, then something was wrong. And so what do you need to do to grow? And because the church had been growing exponentially in the 50s, then you had to maintain that. And so then you begin to compare what's church B doing over here and what's church C doing over there, and what can you do to incorporate some of those same things,
and it came-
or do better. And if you weren't at least doing some of those things, then you were going to slide back. And I don't even know how much that was spoken, but it certainly was considered.
Yeah.
And so that may have driven part of it.
Well, but it was a wrong view of the wrong kind of growth. We were looking at nickels and noses as proof that your church was growing, rather than what's the spiritual temperature of your congregation. And I remember what was one of the things that was big. If your church didn't have a bus ministry, well, then you were definitely going downhill. You had to run those buses all over the place.
Oh, my goodness.
And pick up people and bring them into your church. And,
Oh, yeah.
I guess that would vary with the location.
yeah.
I
yeah.
mean, don't you think that's
Absolutely.
probably
And
depends
also
on
the
where you
culture.
were?
What parent would put their child on a bus by themselves to come to church now without them being on it?
Well, most of the big churches like that were in urban areas, and they would run and pick up kids whose parents weren't involved in a church, and the parents were glad to get rid of their kids for several hours while some church came and picked them up and took them to entertain them, feed them, whatever.
Wow.
All right. So boomers normalized the idea that spiritual life should be convenient, comfortable, and scheduled. It brought many into the fold that way, but it may have dulled our appetite for sacrifice. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Because we want to make it easy for folks to come into the faith,
Actually,
but in
don't-
so doing, it can create a dulling effect to what the faith demands of you.
I was going to say earlier when you were talking about looking back at the generations, I'm not sure that millennials on down really understand sacrifice. I don't think that most of them have ever had to really sacrifice in order, some of them obviously by life situations, but as a group. And maybe we fed that. Maybe we're responsible for them not
Yes.
having to sacrifice.
Yeah, I think every generation wants their children to do better than they did.
Right.
And we're now reached generations where that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what we're being told
Yeah.
by
Right. Sure.
these people, that the current generation will not be better off than their parents.
Well, economically, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Right.
Yeah, look at how many,
mathematically hard to top what some of the
Yep.
parents have done
That's
in their
right.
careers. And so how do you keep up with that, right? How do you react? It was interesting that the conversation with the millennials yesterday touched on the same thing you're bringing up. One of them even talked about, what was the phrase he used? Because I said, tell me about a stereotype that your generation has that may be true, and a stereotype that may not be true. And he talked about, the idea that we move away to college, and we all come back, and it's time for empty nest, but most of us become hammock. He used the word hammock folks. So, you come back not to the nest, but to the hammock, and you don't do anything, and you live in your parents' basement. And they reacted to that in terms of their deep desire for that not to be true, but then pointed out what you just pointed out, which is the desire to break away from that. There are systems in place that actually make it more difficult for them to break away from that. that, and talking to the Gen Zs, again, I'm doing too much talking, I need to be asking you questions, but you're inspiring me because Gen Z, talk about oversaturation of digital, and while they're talking, my son, who's in the interview, he's in the state, pulls out his flip phone, because he traded in his iPhone.
Oh.
And he pulls out his flip phone and said, I got out. And then we talked about that for a while, and he said, but I had to do it because my parents don't know how to teach me to get out. In other words, what you just said, we provided a condition for our next, make it easy, make it accessible, make it better, but we don't know how to get you out of it. We're going to hand you something. It's up to you to figure out how to manage it, you know. And that's a powerful statement that you've made. So, all right.
But I think in some ways, though, you're talking about sacrifice and them not knowing how to sacrifice. But in some ways, I think they do a better job than us in somehow placing less value on some of the material stuff that we have kind of valued so much. Like, we were moving from our house, and we had all this stuff. And I'm saying to my kids, look, bedroom's there, this is there, blah, blah, blah. Well, Mom, we don't want all that stuff. They don't want all the stuff that we've just worked so hard to think was important. You have to have this nice
Jackie, now you're preaching. Now you're
table
preaching.
and
Yeah.
all that. They will just go to Target or IKEA or Walmart,
Or
grab
Amazon.
something out of the box so that they can
Yes.
have
Exactly.
life. Throw it in the garbage, move on. I want to go to Kenya to live for 6 months. I can do that without having to lug all this stuff. Or, no, Mom, I'm not moving this to Pennsylvania because I can go on Facebook Marketplace and just pick up a bed right up there. Why do I need to haul it from Georgia? It makes sense.
We were all talking about every generation wanted the next generation to have it easier or better than we did. So maybe we have reached a pinnacle of how you measure better than, which was the acquisition of things and environments and houses and cars, et cetera. And that maybe there's a redefinition of what the next generation's better will be. Maybe that's what we can hope for and pray for, is that, yes, that redefinition occurs that
Yes.
starts the whole thing
Yes.
over again.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it, Bob.
sometimes they get it right. I mean, for our generation, I think it was work hard. No work-life balance. We don't know what that is. Just put your nose down. Let's work. We go
Grind,
work.
grind.
You know,
Work-life
they're like work-life balance, whatever. You know,
Have a
it's like-
retirement plan.
And then
All that
once
stuff.
we retire, don't know that we're gonna get aches and pains. Once we retire, we'll travel and we'll do it. That's not this generation. They're like, no, I'm gonna work a couple weeks. And then, I'm on a plane coming back from somewhere the other day. This young couple, I don't know if they've worked 2 years out of it. Oh, let's see where we're gonna go next. Young, 20-something. Let's see where we're gonna go next. We're gonna do it the same way we did it this week. We'll go from like a Wednesday and come back on a Tuesday and guys, that's the whole week. When do you work? You know? But they are deciding that they don't want to do what their parents did. They want to live while they work and enjoy. And they're not caring about being saddled with things and well, they love the dogs more than, not even worried about being saddled with kids.
Right.
Not even kids they don't want. They'll take a dog. But many of them, we don't even want kids anymore.
They're changing.
That
they-
does bother me.
Yeah.
Sure. But I think you and Bob, you're right. I think that's a profound observation. Maybe they are changing the definitions
Of better.
of what better
What's
means.
better.
And maybe it's healthier. So Walter Brueggemann, next quote. You know, Walter Brueggemann is one of the eminent scholars in the Hebrew Bible. Just died about a month or so ago, 2 months ago. He said, because he was one of you, he said, boomers are aging into the phase of life when the prophets of Scripture did their best work. And some boomers are asking, are we doing ours? His observation is most of the prophets were boomers, you know, that age span. And that's when they did their best work. because now they have something to say. They have an insight. And he said, and we're asking ourselves, are we doing ours? How do you react to that? Because I've heard some prophecy around this table for the last hour. To be candid with you, I've heard a great deal of it. How do you react to his statement?
I think that's a very interesting question, and I'm wondering if we're talking about it in terms of the church on the one hand, and also in terms of our culture and our society on the other hand. You know, especially as we see the changes that we find disturbing. What is our role? During the generations when we were younger, there were people older than us who took a stand to make things happen that we have benefited from.
Correct.
And now everything's happening on our watch.
Yeah, it's our turn.
It's our turn.
But who's listening? I mean, I think when I think about the prophets, a lot of the prophets said what they said fell on deaf ears.
Right.
And so if we are at that stage and we're sharing wisdom, who's listening?
That's good.
Who's paying attention? I don't know.
I'll tell you something.
And maybe they shouldn't pay attention. I don't know how much wisdom I actually have, but
But do we stop talking?
no, heck no.
Well,
It
that's
still
right,
goes
that's
back
right.
to your purpose that I mentioned before, that, God still has a purpose for us in our encore years.
Do you know that yesterday when I was talking to the millennials around this table, one of the questions I asked them was, because I was unexpectedly surprised. I was impressed on so many levels. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was inspired by so many things they said. I really was. So I then called an audible and I asked this question. I said, what will it take for millennials to be nurtured into the leadership of the church for the future? Based on everything we've talked about, and we talked about some really profound things, what's going to take for millennials to be nurtured in and given leadership in the church of the future? And to the last person, they in one way or another mentioned a relationship they have with someone your age. To the last person, they told stories about someone who was older than them in a relationship with them that empowered them.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was so encouraging, because what I'm hearing you all say about the love that you have for the church and for a hope that you have for a younger generation and their desire to connect, that's a powerful combination.
I find myself, and I don't know if y'all are like this, but in my old age, I don't really care what I say. I used to hold back, and when it came to talking to somebody in the grocery store about church or Jesus or whatever, I would have never done that as a 30-year-old. But now, honey, and so it's like,
Let's go.
and I guess that thing of you don't care what you say when you're old is really
Kinda
good.
works.
It works, and it's working for me. I really think that I'm much more fulfilled as a Christian at this age than I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
And it goes back to when Linda was talking about little children, and you're just so busy with a job and kids, and you don't know which way is whether you're coming or going. But now that I have time, a little bit more time in a different kind of way, time to study, to think, to pray, to really figure out what it's all about, and it's not just about my relationship, but everybody around me. It's a different ball game.
Okay. That will preach.
Yeah.
I want to get your reaction to something, because we're rounding third base now. We're getting close to home. Getting close to home. I want you to take one and pass it down, because that's just the name of them. And I want to do something here. I want to get your reaction to something. There you go. So we say that we value excellence in the worship of God, theological depth and diversity, authentic Christian community, the gospel of Jesus Christ and the growth of his church, responsible Christian stewardship, congregational courage, and a missional consciousness where every member is mobilized to serve. And the disclaimer is, we believe all of those are equally important. They cannot exist apart from one another. But my question to you, if I can play an unfair game with you for just a minute, based on your experience and your station in life and all that we've been talking about here, about what's really important in the church and faith, if you were forced to only point to one value that could be the only value, or I should say the primary value, which one do you elevate above the rest and why? And by the way, it's not a trick question, it's not a right or wrong answer, but what of these values seems to, in your mind, take prime?
You know, this is interesting exercise because I would have given a different answer at different points throughout my life, depending on when you asked me this. In the last 2+ years since we've been here, one of the things that I've been exposed to, thanks to Sanford McAllister through No Longer Bound, and his introducing me to the writing of Bob Goff. Love does, everybody always. I would say authentic Christian community, because we have to love one another and everybody else. And this other stuff we'll figure out. I mean, because theological depth and diversity, that has always been important to me. When you talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ, that's important. But if I'm loving like Jesus loved, I think this other stuff will fall into place.
Okay.
I agree. I looked at that first too, and the fact that I feel like that if people don't feel loved and don't feel included, all this other stuff is gone. They're not going to seek any further.
Yeah.
Now, see, I agree with what you said, the authentic Christian community, and as long as we are reaching out outside the doors, as long as we're reaching out to the community, and I think you're right, we really do strive to reach others. I do think that there's still more work that can be done, and I mean, mainly it's because we live in such a unique community, such a highly diverse community, of where you're going to end up, we're going to all, deal with people who do not share the faith with us, and they're not going to share the faith with us. But if we can demonstrate the love of Christ through what we do on a daily basis, there will be opportunities where people will suddenly go, I got it.
So are you saying then that you're going for missional consciousness where every member is mobilized to serve?
The answer is yes, but I look at it from a perspective of demonstrating love for others and no judgment, accepting anyone who wants to come in the door or even stand outside the door, that we will love them and be part, and they're going to be part of our community.
Well, and the reason I ask is because that's the one that I would choose as well.
Yeah, so we're saying the same thing.
Missional consciousness, because I think for me, missional consciousness is not just going far away. And I think everybody being mobilized to serve, as you serve next to somebody, that becomes a community. And I find that my choir is a community, and we're serving there. And so it's what should I say? It just forms itself into a community when you're serving with people. You grow to love them, you grow to know them. And so I think, and then you reach those who are reaching out. Everybody knows who they are. They know their gifts. They feel valued. And to me, that's the one that.
And those are people probably you would have never come in contact with if you had not been in that.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know how you choose because each argument sounds perfectly right. You know, I do think that that's kind of the core authentic Christian community. And I love to serve. That's kind of my goal in life. But I will speak up for excellence in the worship of God. Because that's what can sometimes give us the energy to be that authentic Christian community and to be that servant, you know, to be the missionary to anybody, to you or anybody, is learning how to feel and open ourselves in the worship of God, and anything that promotes that is, you know, is worthy of our time. Because isn't that what we're going to end up doing?
Right.
Is worshiping at the feet of God. So,
I mean, he says if he's lifted up, he'll draw everybody.
Yeah. Oh,
You know.
if I were wondering if there was something that we maybe is congregational courage. Are we courageous? I wonder. That was the one that I paused at the most.
That may be a good segue to the last two questions. So, you know, we're resurrection people. That's who we are. We believe in the resurrection of Jesus, and we believe that resurrection is always happening, that which dies and buried with Christ rises to something new. And, you know, you've heard me for 13 years now quote that wonderful hymn, "The Church of Christ in every age, beset by change, but spirit-led, must claim and test its heritage and keep on rising from the dead." So if we're to keep on rising from the dead, you can't rise from the dead unless something dies. So in one word or one phrase, what is something that the church of today, not just JCBC, but the church, what must we be willing to let die in order for Christ to rise again in each new generation? What is it that we must let die when it's time?
Having grown up in Southern Baptist environment, and I probably shouldn't say this, we need to stop being fair. The church needs to stop being a bunch of Pharisees.
Yeah.
They need to suddenly say, what did Christ say? What was God's directive to us? What do we know that God wants us to do? And then the rest of it, it doesn't matter.
There you go. Okay. That's good.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah, I was going to say a judgmental attitude.
Judgmental.
Yeah.
Judgmental
Yeah.
attitude.
If we set more rule, I mean, we, the big church, not little church, set rules that
Judgment.
God didn't set them up.
That's it.
Judgment.
That's it. Yeah.
If you're not doing it my way, it's just not right,
Yeah.
Okay.
right? And that's just been a part of how we grew up, but it's just not, it's reached its end. It was probably never a really good end.
Sure.
And now that we're so far along, we realize that it's not a good way to go.
Okay.
It's good to know what's right and wrong, but even that can be mistaken
And actually become cruel.
and
Yeah.
become cruel to other people.
Weaponized.
So that judgmental attitude,
So judgment becomes cruel.
maybe what God thinks is right for me is not what God thinks is right for someone else. That's hard to understand.
All right.
The people that I know that purposely don't come to church because they've had a bad experience, it's all been a judgmental
Around that
issue.
Okay. All right, last question. Thank you. Last question. What is your one word or one phrase prayer for the future of our church? The one thing that you would pray that encapsulates your deepest hope for our church?
Love God, love people.
Yeah, love God and love one another.
One word.
Oh,
He said it.
Just love.
Love.
see, I didn't follow the rules.
I thought it was one word or phrase,
One word or phrase.
Oh, or phrase, okay.
but we'll go with love, or love God and one another, or love
There you go. Okay.
Love your neighbor and your enemies.
Anyone else?
No, I totally.
That'll sum it up. Friends, this has really been great. Really grateful for your transparency and your honest feedback. This has been very helpful, and I'm just, again, overwhelmed by the gift of being your pastor and to be a part of this church together with you. And thank you for what you do, how you love, how you lead in this church. I'll say a quick word of prayer, and then we will wrap it up, okay? Lord, I thank you for each of these, my friends, who have borne witness these last 2 hours. Witness to your love and witness to your transformation in their life, which is always underway. I thank you for their hunger and thirst for you. I thank you for their love for your church. I thank you for their hope and their confidence in its future. I thank you for their willingness to always roll up their own sleeves and to do their part. And I pray, Lord, that your blessings would flow within their lives and the lives of their families. I pray that you would remind them today why it has been a good decision to put their trust in you. And I pray that you would be gracious to them and bless each of their families and what they may be navigating these days. We pray these things because of our deep love for you and our trust in your sovereign love for this church. In Christ's name, amen.
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 All right.